Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT15, and BT15 lets us use lots of new and powerful tools to be able to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to feature one of the 7 Great Demon Lords, and that is going to be of Leviamon himself. So I did skip covering this deck in EX5 because in EX5 he only had about half of his deck in order for us to use. So in BT15 we got the other half to actually complete the deck and make him a relatively strong deck. The deck at its core is a control style deck where it wants to punish the opponent for having a wide field and playing Digimon by effects. The deck also has a couple of ways to be able to manipulate the field, both in terms of putting Digimon onto their field and removing them as well to enable a lot of our abilities. The deck does lean heavier into wanting to utilize a cycling engine, which is drawing and discarding, as its primary way to be able to set itself up, and it also has some really good flexibility on how we could play him and what engines that we could utilize with him in order to make the deck as powerful as possible. The biggest weakness of the deck is it is kind of a stack-based deck, and stack-based decks generally come with their own inconsistencies, but we're not hardcore trying to always digivolve up into a level 6. We're mostly going to be stopping at our level 5s to be able to use them for their abilities, and we're going to have alternative waves to be able to play out our level 6. But the deck also does have some slight speed issue due to all of the purple limitations, so it's not being as fast as it could be, and it does need some time to be able to set itself up, and the opponent could take advantage of that time lag. And on top of that, the deck is a little bit on the awkward side in terms of its overall flow, just because it is utilizing some slightly different abilities that we haven't exactly seen before. So finding the best way to not only just play the deck, but build the deck could be a little bit on the tricky side. But once you get past all of that, Leviamon is definitely one of the most rewarding control style purple decks that we currently have in the game. So with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitamers, I'm only going to be running 4 copies of the BT6 Sunomon. So as I already stated before, we do want to draw cards and discard cards, and Sunomon is just turning that discard into an extra draw to make sure our deck is going to be as consistent as possible. Then when it comes to the level 3s, I'm going to start off with highlighting the Gabumon package. So I do know that there are a lot of cards in purple that did get limited, but we still want to try to utilize some of those cards because they are just that good. So I'm going to be running 4 copies of Starter Deck 16 Gabumon. This is a good way at trying to take advantage of the opponent having Digimon by gaining us an extra memory at the start of our main phase, which can happen after we move out, or he's just already sitting on the field. Then he also has a really important inheritable ability, which is a when attacking ability where once per turn we get to draw a card and discard a card, helping us dig through our deck and set us up. And for that same reason, I'm also going to be running the 1 copy of Gabumon from Starter Deck 6 as a good way to have that extra inheritable of when attacking, drawing, and discarding, except this one isn't limited to once per turn, so if we have a way to multi-attack, we could potentially use this multiple times. And then the last part of the Gabumon engine is going to be the 1 copy of Gabumon X Antibody from EX5. So this has lots of different ways that we could utilize this card because it has an on-play and when digivolving ability, and it can digivolve cleanly on top of our Gabumons or our Sunomon egg. But for using this card, we get to check the top 4 cards of our deck, add 2 cards with Garurumon or X Antibody in their name from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. And if we added cards into our hand, then we get to discard 1, allowing us to have a way to search out what we're actually trying to find and be able to still set us up at the same time. And the cool thing is it's just looking for other X Antibody cards, which doesn't necessarily mean specifically just our Garurumons, but it also can find our Levia X as well. But as far as some of the extra level 3s of the deck, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Gazimon. So this is a flex spot just dedicated to a Floodgate because Floodgates are still good at trying to slow the opponent down. And then I'm also going to be running 4 copies of Syakomon from EX5, and this is another good card at just generally helping us find all of our parts and pieces and discard a card, because its on-play ability lets us draw a card for each Digimon the opponent has on their field, which is really nice because the wider the field, the more we could draw, and then no matter what, we're also going to be discarding 1 card from our hand to help with the setup. And then Syakomon's inheritable ability actually is pretty important with the overall tempo of the deck and control aspect of the deck, because during all turns, once per turn, when an effect plays an opponent's Digimon, we get to gain a memory, so that could help make our plays more efficient or the opponent's plays less efficient. And then when it comes to the level 4s, I'm going to take the same approach as what I did with the level 3s, trying to utilize the cards that are limited. So I'm going to be running 4 copies of the Starter Deck 16 Garurumon. So not only does it have a nice security ability that lets us use our Gabumons and our Matte Ishida Tamers if you're running any, but it also has a nice when Digivolving ability to draw and discard, again helping with the setup. Then on top of that, it also has a nice inheritable ability that's the same as what we saw with some of our Gabumons, allowing us to be able to cycle our deck and can be used on our higher stages. And then I'm also going to be running the 1 copy of Garurumon X Antibody to obviously go on top of the Garurumon, but it's still just one of the best cycling cards that we have, because when we Digivolve up into him, we get a draw 2 and then trash 2. Then we get the extra bonus for utilizing our Garurumon, or if the Digimon has the X Antibody option underneath it, we also get to gain a memory, making us tempo efficient as well. And then I'm going to be running 1 copy of Eismon Scatter Mode, so it's on delete 2, draw 3, and trash 2 is just really good for the overall setup of the deck. And the last level 4 could kind of just be whatever you feel like you want it to be. I'm just going to be utilizing 4 copies of Gesomon because my level 4s are just incentivizing the usage of the level 3s, and I do want that consistency on the inheritable ability that we saw with Syakomon. But this card also has some pretty decent usability, being a blocker himself. He unfortunately can't attack as long as the opponent has no Digimon on the field, which probably doesn't matter, but it could come up. And on top of that, he has an on-play and when Digivolving ability that forces the opponent to choose either discarding a Digimon from their hand, or if they don't, then we just get to gain a memory, making our plays that much more efficient. And then when it comes to the level 5s, I'm going to be running just the best level 5s that we have access to, which is going to be 4 copies of Dragomon as the main level 5, because again, this card just has some pretty high levels of usability. Due to its on-play and when Digivolving ability, you get to play out one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon from their trash suspended. They don't get their on-play effects. This just helps us get a body onto the field to trigger some of our abilities. Then on top of that, he has an all turns ability that combos with his first ability, where once per turn, when an effect plays an opponent's Digimon, we get to play a purple Digimon whose level is equal to or less than the one that we just played, allowing us to be able to spawn some extra bodies, which we could use in various different ways depending on what we're actually able to spawn. Then he does have the inheritable ability of piercing in case we do Digivolve on top of him, to be able to allow our Digimon to attack through the opponent's Digimon and still deal some damage onto them. And then Waru Seedramon, its inheritable ability is doing the exact same thing, but it also has a way to be able to play out the opponent's Digimon as well, because of its when attacking ability, where the opponent plays out a level 4 or lower Digimon from their trash suspended. They don't get their on-play effects, but then we get to have this Digimon switch its attack to the Digimon that we just forced them to play, so we have a good way to be able to trigger our abilities and to clear what we just gave them in case we don't have another way otherwise to clear it. Then it also has a nice all turns ability that's comboing with its when attacking ability, where when an effect plays a Digimon until the end of their turn, all of their Digimon gain an on delete ability of losing a memory, so that way we're actually gaining some tempo and momentum for utilizing our level 5s. And then when it comes to the level 6s, I'm going to be running one copy of EX5 Anubismon, just because it is a really strong card that does have some good synergy with our Leviamon. So it's when Digivolving ability, and it also activates during the main in case we just have it sitting on the field. Allows us to trash up to 3 cards from our hand and then play out a purple Digimon from our trash and reduce its cost by 3. And for every card that we trashed, utilizing this ability further reduces the cost by 1. So ideally, we're going to be discarding 3 cards to play out a Digimon from our trash for a reduced cost of 6, which we have a lot of really good targets for. Then on top of that, it has another ability to help control the field and draw some extra cards if there's already nothing on the field, where when an effect plays one of our Digimon, we get to delete one of the opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon, and if we didn't, we get to draw an extra card. But the main bread and butter level 6s of the deck is going to be our 4 copies of Leviamon and our 3 copies of Leviamon X. So Leviamon has security attack +1 natively on top of his on-play and when digivolving ability, giving him extra usability, where if the opponent has more Digimon or Tamers than you do, you get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with the highest level, and then we also get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with the lowest level, regardless of if they have more Digimon or Tamers than you do. And then his All Turns ability is pretty nice to combo with that, where when an opponent's Digimon is deleted, we get to gain 1 memory for each Digimon deleted, so it's incentivizing a good way to try to clear the field, gain a whole bunch of memory, maintain turn, and aggress onto the opponent. And Leviamon X is kind of taking some similar notes, where he could Digivolve on top of our Leviamon for 2, and he has a nice When Digivolving ability, where if an opponent has as many or more total Digimon or Tamers than you, then you get to delete one of their Tamers, acting as some good Tamer disruption, and on top of that, we get to delete one of the opponent's level 3 Digimon, and one of their level 5, and one of their level 7s. So he's basically hitting all of the odd levels, on top of being able to remove a Tamer. He has security attack +2 naturally, so he's even better at dealing damage with some higher DP, and he even has an ability that activates from the trash, giving him some extra usability, where when an effect plays an opponent's Digimon or Tamer, then one of our Leviamon or Digimon with X antibody in their Digivolution sources can Digivolve into this Digimon without paying the cost, as a good alternative way to be able to get out our Leviamon X. And then when it comes to the level 7s, the deck really doesn't need any, but I have one just because it doesn't hurt either. So you could run Shine Greymon Ruin Mode like I am, or if you wanted to, you could run Death Xmon. It kind of doesn't matter because the whole goal of these cards is just further disruption on the opponent. I just like Shine Greymon Ruin Mode a little bit more because of the blanket -5,000 that he's going to be giving the opponent's field, which could really be disruptive towards what they can do, especially out of raising. Then he even has an end of attack ability to be able to delete him, recover 1, and if we have a Tamer, we get to hatch a new egg into our raising area, which is pretty nice at being able to set us up. But the important thing is why I like Shine Greymon Ruin Mode over Death X is the fact that he can delete himself, putting our level 6s into the trash, which is where they want to be half the time, depending on our options setup. And speaking of our options, I'm going to run a relatively simple, well-rounded option lineup. So the main option of the deck is going to be the 4 copies of Biting Crush. So Biting Crush allows us to trash a card from our hand to delete one of the opponent's level 6 or lower Digimon, acting as some good removal. But on top of that, if the card trashed was a 7 Great Demon Lord, which Leviamon and Leviamon X both are, then we get to place this into the battle area to use for its delay ability later. When an opponent plays a Digimon by an effect, we get to play a Leviamon from our trash for free, and its security ability activates its main, making it just the best setup card that we're trying to go for. And then on top of that, I'm also going to run 3 copies of 7th Lightning. So 7th Lightning is another option card where its main effect allows us to trash a card from our hand to delete one of the opponent's Digimon that's level 4 and one of their level level 6, so Leviamon X takes care of the odd numbers, and 7th Lightning takes care of the even numbers to just wipe out the opponent's field. Then it also has an ability that triggers from the trash during all turns, where when your Digimon digivolves into a Leviamon X, which we know his ability lets us do, then by returning this card to the bottom of our deck, we get to delete one of the opponent's level 4 and level 6 Digimon, again, allowing us to be able to delete multiple Digimon on the field. Then I'm going to just run 4 copies of Wisdom Training because there's zero reason not to run 4 copies of Wisdom Training. It's just a good digging tool, looking at the top 2, adding any purple card from among them into our hand, while this card goes into the battle area to use for later for its main ability of Delay, to have one of our purple Digimon digivolve and reduce the cost of that digivolution by 2, allowing us to be tempo efficient with our evolutions. Then the last 2 options is going to be 2 copies of X Antibody, so it doesn't necessarily matter which X Antibody you're running. I just like the BT9 version just because its security ability anti-tempos the opponent, which could matter, on top of the fact that it allows us to be a little bit more proactive and aggressive with our plays, allowing us to, more importantly, digivolve mid-attack into an X-formed Digimon. And then when it comes to the Tamers, the deck doesn't really need any Tamers, and I'm not running any, but if you wanted to, we do have 2 really solid Mat Ishidas that we could use in combination with our Garurumon from starter deck 16. But that's pretty much it for the build, at least my interpretation of it. I know we are running a decent amount of limited cards, but again, those limited cards are so good that we kind of just don't want to use anything else, and we're just utilizing the next best things to enable those limited cards, as well as just helping with the overall deck strategy on trying to control and manipulate the field. And then as far as just some other useful cards to think of, the deck does have some pretty decent flexibility on the different engines that you could run and different tech and tools, all depending on what you want to play, what you have access to, and what your expected meta is going to be. And then we even do have some potential future upgrades to look forward to in the form of a couple of new X Antibody cards to just enable our X Antibody based strategy a little bit more.